Hey, welcome to another episode of The Selfish Woman. I'm super excited, you guys, to have this guest with me. Her name is Sasha Morozov. She's a former executive who holds a master's in social work and is the founder of Sasha X Home. When Sasha isn't chasing after her two sons, she now utilizes her clinical skills to coach women who are killing it at work but feel like they're failing at home to have more time, less clutter, and systems for a peaceful life. Sasha believes that working moms are exceptional humans who are skilled, devoted, and unstoppable. Yes. Sasha has spent almost 15 years working in the nonprofit field to help individuals and families create better futures. She's an avid minimalist, productivity master, and is obsessed with organizing and designing people's lives at home. She's now developed a 4-step method that focuses on self, home, relationships, and systems to help moms hit start on the life they've put on pause. Wow, that's already exciting to me. Welcome, Sasha.
Thank you. Thank you, Val, so much for having me. I'm excited for us to chat today.
I'm super excited. All of this is just so resonating with me already. I know it's going to resonate with our listeners. So let's just dive right in. I got lots of questions for you.
Bring it on. Let's do this.
Yeah. Okay. So I love how you say that your life started to feel out of sync with the person you were determined to be. I think most women can really relate to that. I know I can. I'd love to know, like, what was going on for you at that time where you started to notice, like, hey, my life isn't matching up with who I know I am as a woman.
Absolutely. I got to say, when I was in my 20s, I loved life. Okay.
Mm.
I was like freshly out of college, living with roommates, going out, having fun, like what I would assume most women were doing in their early mid 20s. And then, eventually it's like I got married, we got a house, we had a kid. And all of a sudden, it just started to feel so heavy. Like there were so many responsibilities, which is true, there are.
Mhm.
However, the thing about it is that I saw it everywhere. It wasn't just me that was like feeling like overstressed, overworked, like overscheduled. Everyone around me just thought it was fine. And that's where I started to really say, like, why is this fine? Why is it okay that every weekend is booked? And why is it okay that for me to have a girls' night with my girlfriends, I have to plan like a month and a half away just to see them for dinner when they live probably within like 5 minutes? It
Yeah.
just blew my mind because I know life can be different because I experienced it differently. I experienced in my 20s, you could just show up at somebody's house. Imagine somebody showing up at your house and be like, hey, I just wanted to see if you're hanging. Like, what are you doing? It's a Saturday. That would just blow most people's minds. So
Yeah.
that to me was one of the things where I was like, this is just craziness. Like now I feel like, and in my 30s, like I'm in a much better, financial space because now I've worked for all these years. We have stability. We have we have all these amazing resources. But if I'm the one not taking advantage of them, who is? Like that's where I started to wonder is like, okay, if I'm living this middle class, like pretty going along the way road, but I'm not actually taking advantage of some of these things that I could, well, who is then other than celebrities? So
Right, right.
that's really where I was like, okay, enough is enough.
It becomes the new normal. When you have a family and you get to that place in life, it becomes normal to be like, I don't have time. I can't see my friends. I can't have a life because now I have responsibilities. Now I have kids, whatever. And we just kind of, I know for me too, just accept that that's the way it is and hunker down until they're older and you can get your life back.
Yes, and that's exactly why I say I help women start their life they put on pause because I don't want to be the mom that waits until their kids are in college to go traveling. That's not what I'm looking for. I don't want to be the mom that my kids look back on and say, yeah, my mom was there for me, but I don't really remember her doing anything for herself. I don't want to be the mom where my kids leave think, what am I going to do now?
Mm-hmm.
I want to be doing things along the way. I want to show my boys the example that when they get married, the expectation and have a wife and a mother, the expectation is that she is not just an independent woman because she has a career, that she's full of life. I
Yeah.
don't want to be different than my husband met me, years and years and years ago, just because now we have kids, just because now we have careers that pull us in all different directions.
Oh my God, it's so true. And like you said about what are we modeling to our kids when we're putting ourselves last, we're stressed out, we're not doing anything for ourselves, whether you have daughters or sons, we are modeling how to be an independent woman or how not to be. And you're right. It's like that's who they're going to look for as a partner, or that's who they're going to become. And so it's modeling something different. But I think that a lot of women feel like that's easier said than done. And so it's like, well, how can I? There's so many reasons not to. There's so many reasons to be like, the kids come first, things have to get done. There really just isn't time. So I'm just going to wait it out. In the meantime, we're depressed, anxious, miserable, unhappy, and not healthy probably. And so it just becomes this spiral of years going by where we're at the bottom. Everyone else seems to be having fun, but like we're not.
Or everyone appears to be having fun too, right?
Yeah.
Like just this appearance, because we look on Instagram, we look whatever, and we see like, oh my gosh, they're traveling, or they're doing this, mom's like working out 5 days a week, and I can't even get my butt off the couch to watch Netflix. Like,
Mhm.
so I absolutely hear. And that's where I say, think about it this way. We as working women have put in years, right? And dedication. If your job was to say, to be a better manager, you should take this course for professional development, you would say, sure, of course. To be a better manager, you would probably think ahead of time and be proactive about what is next year's goals, right? Everybody's
Mhm.
doing goals and metrics and all of this. But we're not doing that at home, in no way. So I want women to start to think about, how are you in the office, and what are some of those qualities you can bring at home as well? Because do we have weekly meetings with our spouse about what's coming up for the next week?
Oh my
Do
God.
we
Yeah.
have do we have yearly things that we plan out ahead of time in January about the quarter, where we want to be, or things we want to do? When you plan things out and be proactive, that's obviously not obviously, but that is more likely than not what I see, then you're able to achieve your goals because you actually set them. So this is why my 4-step method to me is very, very important. Because for me, you start with self. You start with all of this. Like, what do you actually want?
Mhm.
That's what self is all about. Who are you? And what is it that you're looking for? It doesn't have to be, I'm going to leave my husband, travel the world, and, become a Buddhist. No, that's
Mhm.
not realistic. What is realistic is for you to sit down and think about who you are, what do you want, work with me, work with somebody. But the point is to do the self work. And that to me is why we start with that. And number 2 is the home. So for others, maybe other coaches and people teach you, like, once you figure out yourself, just go for it, start it. For me, that's not enough. For me, it's that your home is where you spend so much time. That your home should be your sanctuary. So let's talk about, how do we make your home a place that you love to be, and your life at home? What does that look like? It could be decluttering, or it could be just carving out space for yourself so you can breathe, because you feel like every single time you even go to the bathroom, someone's knocking at the door and wants you for something.
Oh my God.
Let's
Yeah.
create those safe spaces, those beautiful spaces you can enjoy.
So I'm
And
going to
then,
stop you there because
yeah,
there's so much to unpack that I want to let's go through each of these a little bit more depth. Okay. So let's go back to self, because what you
uh-huh.
said was, what do I even want? And I know that so many women, I know a lot of my clients, when I say that, they're like, I don't fucking know. I don't even know like how I'm going to get a shower today. And I think figuring out what you want can be honestly one of the hardest things, because once you know what you want, then you can kind of strategize. But how do we even figure out what we want when we're so busy and overwhelmed?
Yes. So for me, starting simple is like the motto. Simple, simple, simple. So even thinking about, what is 3 things that you like to do? Okay. It could be simple things. It could be yoga. It could be having dinner with a girlfriend. It could be reading a book. It could be scrapbook. It could be whatever. What are those three things? Because for me, when I talk about that, see people easily come up with those because they've always been the things they've enjoyed. If
Mhm.
you've always enjoyed photography, it's not going to be like, oh, let me really think about for the next 10 years. No, I'm saying, what do you enjoy right now? Out of those three things, what is one that you can pick? And from there, what is one that you can pick that you can schedule in for the next week to do?
I
Let's
love that.
start simple.
I love
Because
that.
when you schedule it in for that one time, you're looking forward to it. So it doesn't feel like a hassle.
Mhm.
You're committed to it. And then after you go through it, if you're feeling like that was great, let's schedule it in for the
Mhm.
next week. Let's start slow. Because when we start to do more of the things we want to do, we do less of the things we don't want to do. So instead of
Exactly.
saying, let's get off social media, I'm saying, do something that you know you've enjoyed. If you love the yoga, go to a studio. If you're like, that's just not attainable, there's YouTube.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
yoga at home. Let's come up with ways, even if it's not the ideal. Like, I love yoga on the beach. That is personally what I love. At the same time, that's not really realistic unless I want to drive like
Right.
a half hour from my house and find yoga on the beach and it's freezing and all this, right? But I can do yoga on YouTube, or I can go to, like, there's so many creative ways we can think about it. And it's so
So
much
starting
easier.
small, right, is
Yes.
as soon as you said that, it really opened my brain up to think differently, right? Because I think that question, what do I want, can feel so big. It's like I've got to want the big things. I've got to want, more money, or I've got to want, to travel, or all these things that feel overwhelming. But when you ask the question, what do you enjoy doing? And, like you said, maybe it's scrapbooking, maybe it's whatever. And then you just start doing those little bits at a time. All of a sudden it's like, oh, I know what I like doing. Like you said with yoga, it's like I started doing 20 minutes at home using YouTube. And it's like, I can find 20 minutes a day, or even every couple days. So I really like that. I think that's a great question for people to start with, is like, what do I enjoy doing? How can I do that a little bit in my life, even if I'm busy and sleep deprived and stressed? Maybe, like, instead of watching a Netflix show, you're coloring, or you're, doing something
Yeah.
like that.
Yes. And if you're feeling, and even taking like something negative, like, I never see my friends. Okay. I'm all about putting things in a positive light. So instead of saying, I never see my friends, all my friends like suck now, they don't want to do anything. Instead, saying, I really enjoy being around people. Okay. So when you phrase it like that, okay, where are opportunities where you can have that? Where are opportunities or things that you can do to put yourself in situations like that? So yes, maybe your closest friends that you've been best friends with since you were 5 are, those relationships feel a little distant right now. Maybe they don't have kids, so they don't get it, or you have, whatever it is. I'm not saying all of a sudden, yes, you miss your friends, call your best friend and make a date for next week, which I know I feel like a lot of other people say. What I'm saying is, okay, well, how can you put it in a positive?
Mhm.
And from that, how can you put yourself in situations? So maybe that means going and joining a mom group or something,
Mhm.
joining some sort of working woman group or
Mhm.
networking. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
So that way you're fulfilling yourself in the social sense, which is exactly what you're saying you're missing. But it's not necessarily, beating the horse with the stick of like,
Right.
I tried 5 times to schedule dinner with my best friend and she just doesn't pick up.
Right. Yeah. Reframing it to be more of a positive, curiosity based question, instead of like the negative. This is why it's hard. I love that. Okay. Let's go to home. I'm already loving what you're talking about. I really am into this myself, but talk a little bit more about why the home is important. Why is our environment important?
Oh my gosh, guys, I truly, truly believe home should be not just your sanctuary. You should be able to walk in the door and kick your feet up. Okay. We as women do so much. And the home is really where, to me, the hardest. I know that's cliche, but I swear to you,
Mhm.
I walk through my door and I'm like, I'm home. This is
Mm.
my space. This is my time. This is my community, my family. This is where I'm making those memories. And I want others to enjoy it. If we think about it, whether you own a home or you're renting, home ownership or rent is one of the most expensive things we do in our
Mhm.
lives.
Mhm.
So if we're saying, okay, we have no problem spending all this money on this, but we're not actually enjoying it, like what's going on? Why
Right.
are we not enjoying it? A lot of times what happens becomes this like stopover. Like there's so many activities, you just come home, like grab something and go. And weekends are full of like, oh, I got to do laundry and clean up.
Mhm.
And but to me, that's where I like dial it back and say, okay, well, what else? What do you want to actually have your home be like? If nobody uses the dining room table, what can you use that space for instead?
Mm.
If you want more family time, how can we get more board games and activities into the living room so it's easier for people to just grab it and have fun? Just thinking about the home in a different way.
Mm. Okay, so I'm going to throw an example at you and love to hear what you have to say about this. And this is from my own life when I had my kids were, I'd say, like middle school to teens.
Hmm.
And I love a clean space. I hate clutter. But look, I'm home. The kids come home from school. The front entry is littered with backpacks, shoes, coats. They come in, make a mess in the kitchen. So I always felt like I was behind the eight ball trying to create this Zen environment. It took way more of my time to keep continually trying to maintain that. And it just seemed way easier to just be like, we're living in a mess for the next few years. Let's just suck it up. So, what advice would you give to me if I was in that situation right now?
Absolutely. So I would ask a few more questions, such as like, what does your space actually look like? Things like that. But let's take your entryway, right? So your idea of an ideal entryway, from what I'm hearing, is that it's clean, it's organized. People come in, there's space to walk around, and you're not tripping over shoes. Let's
Yeah,
just say that.
exactly.
Okay. So my next question is, do you have a closet? Something as simple as that. Do you have a closet right there? And what would it be? What would it look like if they just threw it in the closet instead? So instead of it just being out, just in the closet. So that way it's still clean, but maybe in the closet, it's that hot mess. And that's where the compromise is of
Mm,
that. Okay, then it's not going to be beautifully put on the shoe rack. Maybe you don't even have shoe racks at this point because you're just like, whatever.
mhm.
They're just going to throw it in and they're the ones that are just going to take it out, right? But let's say that's not an option. Another way is understanding that, hey, especially at middle school and teens, they really value their independence. They really value their own space and their stuff. Am I
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So, what are the other things? Saying, hey, look, this is the communal space. Your space is your room. So, if you'd like your room to look however it wants, great. But your stuff that's in the communal space has to fit the communal family rules and family way of life. So you can have your backpacks and throw them on the floor and throw those shoes, but throw them in your room. If
Mhm.
they're out, that to me is communal space. And then I'm happy to help you go through your backpack, help you go through your shoes. And that's where they're like, wait a minute, no, I don't want you to go through my stuff. I don't want you to touch my stuff. But you're creating those spaces where you're empowering them and saying you have options. I'm not just going to say you have to just clean it up and nag you every day, because who wants that? That's just a
Mhm.
cycle.
Mhm.
That's a cycle that's just not going to change. You're
Mhm.
giving them options of saying and understanding that this is the family space and we take care of the family space differently than our own space that is behind closed doors. So your bedroom can be spick and spam, right? Because
Mhm.
that's what you value. But their bedroom at this point, more likely, is
It's
not.
not going to be spick and span. And what I hear in that is boundaries. What I hear in that is powerful conversations with your people and bringing back to what you said about taking those skills from, the workplace and bringing them in and running the home and the family more like an organization, and being intentional about what we want to create, and then empowering others to align with that vision. That's what I hear in all of that.
Yes, because a lot of times what people say is that, like, I tell my kids, like, I just need it to be clean. And I'm like, that's great, but they're not going to understand that. They're not going to value that the
Right.
way you value. So that's why it's coming from a place for them to be able to understand. And at middle school and teenager years, what they value is independence and choices. So if you're giving them choices and showing them that you trust their independence and giving them those options, they're way more likely to comply. They're way more likely to think
Yeah.
also outside the box and ask, hey, do you have any ideas?
Right.
Maybe they'll say, you know what? Can we just leave our backpacks in front of the door by the stoop? So that way they don't even come in.
Right. Right. Let them be part of the conversation.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I got one more example. My brain is buzzing with all of this because I'm like flashing back to like when I was a mom of 3 young kids. But one other thing that goes way back to baby stage that I know so many women did what I did and so many women didn't do what I did. But what I did was, if the baby's napping, I'm napping, because I need to prioritize my sleep. And yet that means I'm compromising on doing the dishes, cleaning the house. For me, that really worked. I kind of had to just accept that my house wasn't going to be as clean as I wanted it to be because I prioritized my sleep. But then I see other young moms doing the opposite. When the baby sleeps, I'm going to bust my ass to clean this house. So that's a dilemma on both sides. What would you say about that?
Well, I would say there's no right answer. Number one, everybody's different, right? So people have different priorities. Some women are not going to be able to just go nap because they know there's dishes, and that's just going to drive them crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they're like, my body needs it, but they can't. Their mind's going to race. It's going to, so there's no like perfect answer. But here's a couple of things to think about. Okay. So let's say your body really needs naps, right? I mean, I'm telling you, I took naps with my kid up with my first anyway. Second was different, but with my first up until he was like at least like 7 months, a year old.
Oh, yeah.
Like, because I love sleep, right?
Mm-hmm, me too.
So my question is, what would it look like if when the baby is awake, who else is around, or what other options are there for you to be able to do those things? Like, how can we get creative? That doesn't mean just put the baby in front of the TV, but it can mean, hey, do you have somebody that you can call, a mother, a friend, that can come over every Wednesday? And you know that when they're over, you're doing laundry, or when they're over, you're doing this. So you're not just slicing your time even further than you have already, but you're thinking creatively about, hey, what would it look like to have a little bit more support during the time? So you can obviously always hire help, right? So you can hire somebody to clean your house for the time that the baby is young. And maybe that's the option. That's the solution for some people. Maybe the solution is being creative. Maybe the solution is honestly just like kid swapping. You friends with another mom who also has a baby. You're like, hey, I'll watch your baby on Tuesdays with my baby. You watch my baby on Thursdays. And that way it's like mutually beneficial. Like, there's so many creative ways we can think about. And we also have to take a look at ourselves and think about, what are we okay with and what are we okay with letting go at the moment? So maybe you love to have that perfectly ironed shirt all the time. Maybe that's something you're able to let go of for now, and you look at it as temporary. I think
Right.
that's also one of the other things of being a mom. We feel like if we don't do it, that's it. It's like permanent. We have no other choice. And I'm saying we're going to go through ebbs and flows all the time. So give yourself some space and understand that sometimes it'll be great and sometimes it won't.
Right. Yeah. I love that. So many great ideas just from that. Amazing. Okay. Let's move on. What's the next one? Relationships.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Big topic.
Yes. So when I say relationships, what I'm talking about is relationships in the home. And we kind of started to talk about that with your last question. So what I found is that we are natural caregivers. So that means we're usually the ones who are taking care of most of the things at home.
Mhm.
So really looking at the relationships all from all angles, such as who else can help out at home, what would it look like, what are you okay with letting go, and what relationships what do you want your relationships to look like at home? Okay? Because maybe you're at a point of where you feel really disconnected from your kids, really disconnected from your partner. And it could be as simple as, hey, when we're home, I'm watching TV in the bedroom, he's watching TV in the living room. And that just not working for me. It could be as simple as that. And that, I will say, I've seen a lot of,
Okay.
especially during the pandemic when
Uh-huh.
both couples are home and they're like, we spend way too much time together during the day. Like, so the second that like the kids are down or anything, they're just on their own in different spaces.
Yep.
And again, that may work for some, but for somebody else, that might be feel really disconnected because they're the type of person that really feels connected when they're sitting next to each other. They're enjoying something. So again, it's having proactive conversations. Again, it's thinking about holistically, what do you want your home to feel like? Because if you're walking by that couch and now you're just like disgruntled because like, oh, this is where he sits by himself every night and watches ESPN, and how much more can you watch of sport? Like that's not where we want to be. We want to be, wow, that's the couch that we have family movie night. That's the couch where, when the kids go to bed, we eat ice cream because we don't want them to eat it, but we're going to eat
Mm-hmm.
it. Different things like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So how do women enlist their husbands to do more help around the house? I mean, this is an ongoing topic.
Yes.
And it can be such a challenge because it's like, we don't want to be the nag. We want to feel supported, but let's just be real. That's a big topic.
Yes, absolutely. $1 million question. So I will say, I'm not trying to generalize men here in any way. So take that as a, fair warning. What I have seen in my professional life is the fact that honestly, it's not that the men don't want to help. They don't know how. And they feel that when they try, they don't do it the way we want. And therefore, that failure, it's not that the failure causes them to not do it again. Our nagging and our way of responding to
Mhm.
their try sometimes pushes that off. So thinking about it proactively and thinking about realistically, look, you're married, you know your husband. Okay, I'm not going to come in and be like, maybe your husband this. No, you know your husband. You know that, like, I'll give you an example for mine. For mine, what if it's not on his calendar? I swear, it's like it's never ever exists or will happen. So for mine, guess what? Instead of just telling him, hey, this is coming up, or hey, I need your help around the house with this, or hey, garbage day. Garbage day hasn't changed in the 10 years we've lived in this house. Okay. It hasn't changed. I
Mhm.
don't know if he just blocks it out, but it just hasn't changed. So at the same time, for me, it's like I'm still gonna still put it on his calendar as repeat garbage day Thursday mornings. So that way he knows, okay, well, I'm gonna take the garbage out Thursday morning versus me coming up Thursday morning being like, babe, like, hello, the garbage is still here.
Yeah, and then you're pissed
You
off.
yes,
I think
yes.
it's also like the difference between we talk there's this topic and I don't know what it's called, but it's like something about fake incompetence or something. And this conversation about men who are like, I don't know how to do laundry, or I can't do it the way you want, so I'm just not going to do it.
Mhm.
And there's the difference between sort of nagging or criticizing as opposed to what I hear you saying is supporting. And, if you're asking for support from your partner, how can you support him to be successful? That's what I'm hearing you say is like, yeah, if I'm going to put it on your calendar, some women might bristle at that and be like, well, now I'm his mommy. But I think what I hear more is like, I'm supporting you just like you're supporting me. Let's be a team. That's more what I hear you saying.
Yes, because you know who they are. You know them. So what works for them? And my other big tip is honestly, don't start with something that's going to piss you off. Okay?
Yeah.
So like if you want something, if like the dishes need to, if you're a type person that the dishes need to be unloaded the second that buzzer from the dishwasher goes off, okay? And then you hate the sink full of dishes, to your partner, that's not a trigger. So they're just going to do it when they have time.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be later. And now you're just getting angry. So, what I'm saying is, don't start with those. Do not start with chores or things in the house that are going to trigger you. Start with something that really is a little bit smaller. So that way, again, especially if it's new, just like anything else, on the first date, you don't ask them to marry you, right? Like, you're like, okay, let's see how this is going to work. Start
Mm-hmm.
with something smaller. Maybe it's picking up the kids from school instead of you, and that way you're like, whatever, if the kids wait 10 more minutes,
Right.
whatever, they wait 10
Right.
more minutes, that's not going to trigger you.
Right.
What is something, start with something that's not going to trigger you and work your way up, because and that's not just partners, that's with kids too. I
Mm.
see parents all the time being like, well, he's old enough to do this. Like, yes, and just because they're old enough, but if it's going to trigger you, then guess what are you really teaching your children then? You're just teaching them, if they're not obeying the way I need it to be done, then it's not good enough.
Mm-hmm. You're delivering a lot of truth. I mean, this is what we need to hear, right? Because it's easy to just complain about something or make up reasons or excuses why we can't have what we want. But what I really hear and what you're saying is like, no, you're telling us the truth. You're taking us to school. You're not letting us get away with that, but also giving us really creative ways to get what we want and in a realistic way, which I think we all definitely need to hear.
Yes, and this is why I'm a coach. This is what I do. And I invite anyone to work with me or work with someone, because at the end of the day, just like you would invest in yourself professionally, it isn't it time for us to invest in ourselves personally.
Mm-hmm.
If you have been married, if you have kids, you've been around the block and you've been putting up with this for far too long, far too long.
Mm-hmm. Amen. I totally agree. Okay, let's go to the last one, systems. I want to hear about this
Yes.
one.
Yes. So for me, it really is when you go through self, home, and relationships, that's the foundation. That's when you know who you are. That's when you know what you want. That's when you know what you want life to look like at home. So systems is really habits and routines. Because to me, when you go through that, you've already started. Remember,
Mm,
I'm very much on the positive train. So by the time we talk about habits, routines, most of the women are like, oh, wait, you're right. I've already changed this, or I've already started to talk to my husband about this, or I've already implemented this. So it's a lot easier to go faster in habits and routines when you've already been walking to get to running versus you're at start, which is what happens with a lot of New Year's resolutions, right?
mm-hmm.
Because we wake up and we say, okay, I'm going to lose 25 pounds. But if you haven't done the mental work to think about why it's important, you haven't really given yourself time to make up your mind of what exactly that looks like, losing the 25 pounds, then you're more likely to fail. So
Mm-hmm.
the systems is really about setting you up for success, making sure that your habits are aligning with those priorities you made in self, making sure your routine has the space so you're not this overwhelmed, so that if something comes up, because it will, okay? I think that's the other thing, is that sometimes we think like, okay, well, I have this great schedule, and I always say, but where's the buffer? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
because we overschedule ourselves because we want to do everything. And I'm saying start small. You could always add, if this schedule works, do it for 3 months, add something then, versus trying a schedule that's full jam packed for 3 months, and then you're exhausted and you're like, this is nothing ever works, routines don't work. because it's too much all at once.
Yeah. Oh, I can't tell you how many school years I would start with that amazing calendar and I would fill it all out with all the schedules. And then literally like by October 1st, it's just something that is hanging on the wall that nobody does every freaking year, right? I would do that and it never worked for me. And I feel like maybe what you're saying, right, is like, it's just too ambitious and it was probably just my ideal instead of the realistic one that would have maybe helped me to feel more successful.
Yes. Then what I'm saying is I'm not going to like kill your idea of ideal. I'm not. What I'm going to say is instead of going through those school years of failing each year, what if you went through it and just did one thing? How much more successful would you have gotten by 5 years and added to that schedule one thing a year versus trying to keep doing the same thing over and over
Yep.
again?
Yep. And I love what you said about buffers, because I know for me, like if I don't have a buffer of time, I get so stressed. And, I would drop the kids off at school and then I'd go to the gym and do a class and it started at 9. And I was always in this panic state of, trying to get them out and I'm stressed at them and I'm stressed with myself. But then if I let go of that class and just said, I'll show up at 9:30 and I'll just do like a half-hour workout on my own, for me, it was like that buffer. I could relax. I was more chill. And of course, then I'm not the stressed out, angry mom.
Yes, absolutely. And in hindsight, what would have that extra half hour really mean? Probably not that
Yeah,
much,
no.
right? Like in terms of what you're actually doing, not that much. And that's what I'm saying. It's all about the small changes.
Mhm.
Just start somewhere, do something, commit to one thing, and make it positive. So that way you're more likely to actually stick to it.
I love that. I love how you're supporting all parts of women's lives that matter so much. And yet we tend to just focus on maybe one at a time. You're really coming in and creating this holistic support system so that women can thrive regardless of how busy they are, regardless of what's going on, kids, work, whatever. I really like how you're managing lots of different aspects here.
Thank you. And for me, it's just making it personalized because everybody really is different. And if they weren't, then everybody could listen to a YouTube and be like, oh, cool, I'm set up for life.
Yeah.
There's no one method. That's why a lot of like things where I feel like women get burnt out on is they're like, okay, I'm going to learn to organize. I'm going to learn how to talk to my husband. I'm going to learn this. And they'll read a book or watch a YouTube and then they try it. And they're like, well, this doesn't fit me. And that's where I'm like, yes, this is why I do one-on-one coaching. So that way it is personalized because at some point, if you've tried all that, ladies, if you've tried it, try something different, try
Mm.
something more personalized. It doesn't have to work with me, but something,
Mhm.
work with someone that could really be that feedback for you.
Yeah, totally. I love that. Okay, I have a couple more questions for you.
Yes.
One that I really wanted to ask you, because I can see and I know from looking at your website and what you do that giving back is really important to you. So I want to know, how does you being selfish, making yourself a priority, allow you to give more?
Yes, absolutely. Just like you were saying before, you didn't want to be that angry mom, but because you were overbooked, you were that stressful mom, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
For me, exactly what being selfish is, it's being happy basically. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's what we need more of in the world, more moms being happy. All
Right.
right.
Amen. Yes.
On. So for me, when you're happy, life is so much easier. Life just flows, your day just flows. So when you're thinking about being selfish, how that rubs off, are you kidding me? My husband is way happier to see me. My kids are way happier to see me. And I
Mm,
show up in a different light. And that is what I want. I want to be the best version of myself, not a best version of anybody else, but the best version of myself. And that's what I'm striving for. And
Mm.
that's what I want for others as well, because that's what I feel like we deserve. We've
Mhm.
worked so hard already. We've experienced life. We're not like kids that are like teenagers trying to figure it out. We're at a point in our lives of where we know who we are. And if we know who we are, we know what that next level of ourselves looks like as well.
That's so good. I love that so much. Okay. If you could go back in time and tell your little girl self one thing, what would you say?
You know what? To be honest, I would say keep being a badass, because I was always the one questioning. I was still the one that's like, whatever, I'm going to take over the world and I can do anything. And if someone said no, I'd be like, I don't care. Like, I'm still going to figure out a way to do it. I would say, trust your gut.
I
Honestly,
love
trust your
that.
gut, because at the end of the day, I would say not the mistakes, but the lessons I've learned, things like that, is when I knew my gut was saying like, "Don't do that," or I
Mhm.
knew that. So know yourself and keep being a badass.
Keep being a badass and trust your gut. I mean, if we could only all hear that as little girls, I think that's amazing. Okay, some fun questions for you as we wrap up.
Yes.
I'd love to know, what is one of your favorite books?
Well, I just said it also. You Are a Badass
Oh
is
yeah,
one of my favorite books.
that's
So
by
that
Jen
goes,
Sincero, right?
yes,
Love that book.
yes, yes. One of my favorite, Atlas Shrugged by oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, Ayn
Uh,
Rand.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I like forgot. But that's more, that's not in the self-development,
yeah, yeah.
obviously, but
I love
um
that book.
yes, yes.
I love that you said that book. That's very very cool, and I haven't heard that one before. But yeah, it's a great read, great book. Challenging, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
If you had to get a tattoo right now, what would you get?
Ooh. So for my culture, it's definitely a no for tattoo. So I will honestly say this really isn't something I've thought about. So, but I would say it's got to be, I don't know if like a heart or just something positive, or just keep going, something along those lines of like, you got this,
Right.
like, maybe my kids, okay, fine. Maybe like my kids' initials or something like that,
Well, you
right?
can do that too, right? You can have like their
I mean,
initials and
like,
then like keep going.
yeah, yeah, like you gotta be like, okay, I feel like guilty, like I gotta say my kids, right? Like,
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Okay, last question. How are you being selfish these days?
ooh, I love this one. So I will tell you, one of my favorite things to do, and it's funny enough that we're talking today, but one of the things I do is I really try to unplug from Friday night to Saturday night. So no technology, just if it's not on the calendar, whatever.
Mhm.
Everybody knows that if they need me, call my husband. And that has worked out amazing, because it really like takes all of this like stress away. Even like think about it, when you get a text message, you're like, oh, I got to respond to that text message. So to me, being able to do that is really a gift, is really a way to say to myself, like, whatever, I need that space. I'm a type person, I like quiet spaces, I
Mhm.
like quiet time. So on Saturdays there is no like, let me look up what's going on, let me answer a text, let me run here, let me go shopping. Like, I don't even do that.
Mm.
I have a book, everybody knows. Once during the day I go outside, I read a book, I take a nap, like just let it flow. If breakfast
Wow.
takes 2 hours, breakfast takes 2 hours, because it's just going. It's just a way to unplug.
Yeah, I love that so much. If we all could only just do that one day a week, where you said, like, you're not even picking up your phone, you're not even looking at text. That is, I really feel like that is liberating and so healthy to just have that space where it's quiet and you can actually just be with yourself.
Yes, and I take notes. Let me tell you, like I have a pen and paper of where like I honestly try to not think about business as well.
Mhm.
So it's really just like thoughts about myself, thoughts about my life, thoughts about just, and it's not intentional. It's not like I sit there, I'm like, I'm gonna write or anything.
Mhm.
just things pop up. When you give yourself that space, things pop up into your mind.
Yeah.
And I really want to make sure people know it didn't just happen overnight. Okay.
Yeah.
It's happened first of like, okay, just Friday nights, I'm not going to answer my phone. I'm just going to unplug. And everyone knew that. Like my boss, for years, my bosses, all my supervisors knew that, you know what, once I leave the office on Friday, that's it. Like
Yeah.
I'll answer an email maybe on Saturday night or Sunday, but
Right.
nope.
Mm.
And just step by step setting those boundaries. And
Mm-hmm.
I saw that I enjoyed it. That's the thing. I enjoyed it. So
Mm-hmm.
for you, you're like my husband could never. He has ADD. He like needs to be doing 20 things at once. So everyone's different.
Yeah.
Just find what you enjoy and think about ways you can do more of it.
Right. Okay, everybody, listeners, listen up. Let's use Sasha's example as a challenge to find one thing that we enjoy and do it this week. Do one thing you enjoy, okay? And then tell me about it, and we'll start a club.
Yes.
Okay, lovely. So how can we find you? How can we work with you? Tell us all the things.
Absolutely. So if you are a working mom, head on over to Sasha X Home and grab your 5 steps to coming home happy after work so you can feel a little bit brighter and lighter starting today. I also have a Facebook group where I go live, share tips and tricks, and always feel free to book a session. I'd love to talk to you about what's going on with you as well.
I love that so much. I love the support you give to women who need it the most. We are all badasses. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Your energy is infectious. I feel like I'm ready to go like clean my apartment and like get my shit together. Thank you so much.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, Val. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you, Sasha. And we'll talk to you guys soon.